the Bellingham Planning Board. And we have a few items on our agenda this evening, and we're going to take them out of order a little bit for the benefit of the public. But before we do that, I would like to ask the town administrator, Dennis Frame. I'd like to turn the floor over to Dennis.
Thanks, Bill. I'll be brief. I know you got a big audience there. Just wanted to update the planning board on our process for hiring a new town planner. It seems we've gone full circle, and we're right back to the beginning, and I think we're in a good place. We've negotiated an agreement with Jim to stay on for the foreseeable future as our town planner, and he'll continue servicing your board as he's done virtually. I know board members have been very pleased with the work he's done, as am I. We continue to meet regularly. And I think we're getting a lot of good things done. It does leave a little bit of a void in the office for the day-to-day, and the Board of Selectmen ratified my appointment of Amy Sutherland to the position of Assistant Town Planner. So Amy will be working as the face of the board, more or less, or the office on a daily basis. She's somewhat familiar, I know, to all of us, having been here for a few years, but Amy's got 20 years of experience working for municipalities and specifically for land use boards. So I think you know she is, and what a great job that she's done. Amy Bartoloni, who works part-time for the town clerk, and Amy's been with us for a long time as well, and she's going to be handling the minutes, the duty of the minutes. So I think we got a great lineup, and I'm very pleased with how things have been going, and I think it's going to run extremely smoothly, seamless. Sometimes the best answer is right in front of you, but it took us a little while to get back there, and I know Jim was settling into his new role, and he's comfortable that he can provide the same level of support, or the necessary level of support, virtually for us. And with Amy's backup in the office, I think we're going to be just fine. So that's the update, and be happy to answer any questions, but not tonight. Feel free to give me a call, because I know you have a full agenda. Bill, you and I have talked, obviously, and any questions from other board members, feel free to give me a call.
Dennis, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and congratulations to both Amy's.
Thank you.
I would like to ask the public, are a lot of people here this evening for Prospect Hill Estates?
Yes, we are.
Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. What
Well, I see a decent
I'd
number
like
of
to
hands, yeah.
move the agenda around. This will be a fairly quick item. Jim, can you give us an overview of Prospect Hill Estates?
Sure. So before we do that, if the board could read the public hearing notice into the record and motion to open.
Certainly. The applicant and owner, Wall Street Development Corp., proposes a 19-lot residential subdivision on approximately 72.6 plus or minus acres of land at the corner of Lake Street and Prospect Street being in Franklin, and Bellingham, shown in Assessors Map 6520, 6522, 6987, Zone Agriculture. The plans were prepared by GLM Engineering Consultants at 19 Exchange Street, Holliston, Mass. 01746, and entitled Definitive Subdivision Plan, Prospect Hill Estates, Bellingham, Mass., dated December 17th, 2021. I would now entertain a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
The driver second.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and open discussion in the meeting for Prospect Hill Estates. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Jim, can you provide us a brief overview?
So excellent. So you do have a definitive subdivision and stormwater management permit before you tonight. As you are aware, you have a package with a complete application. However, in reviewing that application, the planning office determined that all the abutters were not notified in accordance with 40A Section 11, and we've asked for the applicant to properly notify prior to any discussion of this item. So my request for the board tonight is a simple continuation to the February 24th meeting, giving the applicant enough time to properly notice those entirety of the abutters.
So moved.
And Jim, just one moment, Brian, for the benefit of the public, since the applicant failed to make proper notification, we cannot have a public discussion on this right now. So that's why we're going to make a motion to move this forward to the February 24th meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have really no problems with the continuance as the board needs to follow its rules. I was wondering whether or not in the interim period is the planning board having a peer reviewer for this project, and whether or not that process can be proceed in the interest of time.
Mr. Chairman,
Jim, but I really don't think so at this point.
and nevertheless, this board historically has run concurrently with the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission notified me that they hadn't received the NOI as of today. So, we can certainly start those conversations at our next meeting.
It's just so you know, I mean, Jim, it's a little bit more complicated with conservation issues, and it requires a little bit more fact-finding relative to the property that is in the process of being prepared but hasn't yet been prepared, and that's the reason why we haven't filed with the commission as of yet. But I would hope that that process, even though I would like it to run on a parallel track as well, I would hope that that wouldn't affect the planning board's review of the subdivision at this point.
Sir, I concur with Jim that it should be on parallel tracks, and it should be put off to the next meeting. Jim, you concur?
Yeah, yes, that's perfect. That's reasonable.
So I have a motion. I need a second to continue.
Second.
Excuse me? Is the question,
Bill would like a second. Bill would
I need
like
a
a second.
I need
to
a
the
second
motion.
to continue this motion.
Phil
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Phil has seconded.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. It's been approved and seconded to move this to the February 24th meeting. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries.
nay, I would like to ask a question, if I may. My question is this. We have a lot of deforestation going on South Maple. I'm wondering if that will be allowed to continue while this meeting and discussion is being postponed.
Mr. Chairman, may I? So,
Can you respond?
understood, Ms. Cross. I understand what you're referring to. You can either give my office a call or the building department office a call, and we can certainly have a chat and look into the matter a little further. And that goes actually, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, that goes with everyone in the public here. If there's questions about this new project, you're welcome to give the planning office a call, stop by the planning office and get a copy of the plan, or talk to the building office. And we're happy to engage in any of your thoughts, as well as offer any comments and answer any questions.
Should I hold my second question for speaking to someone in the office? It's very brief.
Yes, well, okay, go ahead.
If the Conservation Commission, if I understood correctly, they have not been notified yet. If that's correct, I'd like to know if there's a plan for them to mark the wetlands and vernal pools.
Yes, so that's already been completed, but they'll have to go through a full application process with Conservation Commission.
Okay. Thank you, and I apologize if I broke the rules.
No, not at all, ma'am. I want you to participate. I apologize for this process, but since it wasn't properly notified, it's not really fair to open up the discussion for the benefit of the town and the applicant. And moving it to the second meeting in February is the most appropriate thing to do. And again, as Jim said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Amy or Jim in the planning office. And please, by all means, continue to come to these meetings. We look forward to your participation, and it's highly encouraged.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming out tonight. I appreciate you raising your hand. Thank you. Jim, our next item on the agenda is 353 Maple Street. This is a continuation of the public hearing. And can you bring us up to speed on where we are with this?
Absolutely. So I see the applicants here tonight, and I'm sure they could provide you with a brief update. But in terms of the planning office side of things, we've engaged in our peer review engineer for stormwater and traffic. They are just getting started. There was a little bit of a slowdown with trying to coordinate the scope and fee, but we've now established that. We have completed a sound study. I'm sure the applicant can speak to that. But aside from that, it's an ongoing review of the amendment to the decisions. And I think we would have more for you on the 24th of February, very likely.
So Jim, for the benefit of the public, based on the actions that took place today, we are able to proceed with an analysis of stormwater and traffic. And we should have those results, hopefully, by the February 24th meeting.
I think that would be reasonable, yes.
So now what I'd like to do is ask the applicant if they would like to provide a brief update and overview of the from the sound engineer.
Brandon from Kelly Engineering. We do have Mark Wallace, the sound engineer from Tech Environmental here.
Thank you very much. Floor is yours, sir.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Mark Wallace. I'm with Tech Environmental from Waltham, Massachusetts. As the board is aware, we had received a peer review from Cabinetacci Associates back on December 13th, 2021 was the date of their report. We had reviewed those comments and updated our study based on a majority of the recommendations in that peer review. We submitted a revised sound study dated January 13th, 2022. As part of that sound study, we have a cover letter responding directly to the peer review comments and addressing the recommendations from Cabinetacci Associates. If you wish, I could walk through their comments and our responses to that tonight, or I could do that at another time.
No, feel free.
Okay. So I don't know if everybody has seen the cover letter to our report, but I can walk through that. It was broken out by the sections of our sound study. And so I'm just going to cover it that way, just the way we had done in our cover letter. Section 1 talked about common measures of environmental sound that was covered in our sound report. CTA reviewed that and had no recommendations to section 1. Thus, we didn't make any changes to our sound report. Section 2, existing sound levels. Our sound study was based on average ambient sound conditions, both for daytime and nighttime, that were based on 39 decibels during the day and 33 at night. And the recommendations from CTA was to see if we might want to look at the short-term measurements we had taken back in 2016 and 17, along with the long-term monitoring we had done at the time, just to confirm those numbers. I think, from the perspective of clarity, I think our report was updated to make sure that he understood that there had been additional monitoring done per the request of the board back in 2016 and 17. We did some additional long-term monitoring back in October of 2016 that confirmed our assumptions with the background ambient conditions. And so we're not recommending to do any additional adjustments to those monitoring values. Those are used for the basis of doing the Mass DEP noise policy evaluation. Thus, we didn't change that in our sound study. Mr. Tachi from CTA also had a comment on the noise regulations and wanted some clarity on the text, which we had done some additional labels on figure 2 of our report to accompany that in our revised sound study report. And we also addressed his concerns about the sound source levels from that we did not have documented in a table. We did include that as a table 7 in our report to provide some additional information about the sound levels that we were using based on mechanical equipment on the rooftop, as well as those are the continuous sound sources. And then also the intermittent sound sources, which are, the trucks idling, the backup alarms, and the truck pass-bys within the site itself. So we provided that updated table. We also updated our figure to include where those sound sources were in our sound study report, and also locating the 14-foot tall earth berm. There was a comment in section 4 of our modeling assumptions results with regards to trailer connection and disconnecting, trailer acceleration sounds, and trailer loading impacts. So we had already included in our sound study trucks accelerating, representing as a truck bypass, pass-by. We did not include trailer changeouts. We don't believe they're applicable to this project, given the fact that the expansion does not include tractor trailer storage areas. Thus, they weren't included in our revised sound study. So as part of the reformatting of the report, including a new table 7 with the sound source information, that also changed the numbering of our tables that show the impact analyses that we did for the Mass DEP noise policy, as well as the Bellingham noise control bylaws. And so we've updated that in our reports. We've also added some clarity as to what is included in each of those tables with regards to whether they include ambient sound conditions or not. So we've updated that. I think that's added some additional clarity for the board to review those results. So I think in summation, I think we've provided a revised sound study report that improves the clarity, updates the recommendations per CTA's peer review letter, and I'm hoping that it shows that it complies with the Mass DEP noise policy and the town's noise bylaws, and so I believe that should be acceptable, hopefully for the board to approve. Thank you.
Mark, for the benefit of the public,
Sure.
could you just enlighten them on what the impact, if any, there will be based on this expansion? I know there's a lot in this report. I know a lot of the neighbors, if they're here, may not read it, and the general public. Can you just give us a 1,000-foot overview?
As far as the impacts to the neighbors, is that
Yes.
what you're, yes. So the impacts that we have assessed in here are generally between during the daytime, the change in sound levels would be between 0 and 5 decibels. To give that some perspective, A change in sound level of 3 is imperceptible. Changes of 5 are considered noticeable. When it comes to the nighttime conditions, again, looking at sound levels that are generally in the 2 to 7 or 8 decibel range. At the closest property lines to the site, they're up around 9 or 10, but they're still in compliance with the Mass DEP noise policy. With regards to the town of Bellingham noise ordinance or bylaw, the sound levels are below those limits. They're set at 45 decibels for residential areas at night and 50 during the daytime. And our predicted sound levels, I believe, are between 39 and 42 decibels. So below those limits as well. And again, we included 19 receptor locations represents the closest homes on Maple Street and Stonehenge Road and on Highland Street, or High Street, I'm sorry. And then also at the property lines.
Thank you. Is our peer reviewer here this evening?
No, not this evening. The thought was to take in the items, and if the board has questions, we can invite them to a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Jim, I thought I saw a comment from someone in the public that the abutters had not been properly notified on this.
No, that's a chat for the last item.
Okay.
I've clarified that. Thank you.
Okay. Do any other board members have any questions?
If I could, Bill, so the topic of sound will come back up around when our peer review consultant is here to comment on Mr. Wallace's comments, right?
I think we're targeting February 24th for that.
Okay, so I'll save my question.
Well as wastewater and I forget the other topic off the top of my head.
We'll have traffic and stormwater.
Traffic and stormwater.
Yes.
Thank you. So that'll be a fairly busy night. I do have one question, unless it's someone else on the board wants to make comments. Hours of operation for this pretzel company. You know what they are?
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I don't. And I would add that we don't know that this tenant will be the tenant in the expansion space. They typically start early, but do not go all night long. But we can certainly determine what the hours of operation are for the existing tenant.
Well, as we move forward, I think that be a critical component for neighbors. We would like to, although I do know that around the corner is 24 hours. If we could keep that threshold for normal working hours for this current tenant, I know it would be greatly appreciated by the neighbors. Ideally, we would not like to see traffic from 12 to 6 in the morning, 12 at night to 6 in the morning.
Okay, well, I'll report back as to what the hours of operation are for the existing tenant. But again, it's hard to speculate what a future tenant might be if it's not this one, if it's not an expansion of Snyder Ranch.
I understand that. And as we move forward, that'll be, taken into consideration as we go down the road.
Understood. Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Anyone from the public have their hand raised, Amy?
I'm not quite sure how to raise my hand on Zoom. but I'd like to be recognized.
Mr. Dunley,
Yes,
the floor is yours.
thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. With specific regard to the sound study, apparently there's a new sound study that is not on the town's website, so I have not had a chance to review it. There is one out there dated September 21st, I believe, the date. So the first question, there's a newer sound study that will be available to us?
Jim, that should be public information, is that correct?
Yes, everything that the board gets will either be on before the meeting or shortly thereafter. So we'll definitely get it on there, Jim.
Okay, so we can open up questions on the sound study when the public has had an opportunity to read and review the latest version of it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. One point, the sound engineer, Mr. Wallace, noted that the nighttime, the day and the nighttime decibel limits were 50 and 45. They're actually 50 and 40 because this is in a scenic road. Not sure how his calculations, go above 40 or if they do at all, but that was a point, an incorrect statement that was made. In terms of the hours of operation, I'd like to see hours of operation codified into one of the decision points. Simply a good faith statement of hours of operations, as we know, is unenforceable and meaningless. Should I limit my comments just to the sound study portion at this time?
Jim, for now, that would be appreciated.
Yep, very good. I'll stop.
I think you can appreciate that.
Yep, I'll stop there then. Thank you.
And Jim, if I'm sure you heard, I'm concerned about the hours of operation as well.
Yep.
And at some point, working under an assumption perhaps that it's going to be Snyder's Pretzel. You may want to look at them utilizing swish back alarms if it ain't needed at all. And they can try to retrofit their trucks with that.
Yeah,
Reduce the sound.
I had read some of the meeting minutes that spoke to the swish alarms rather than the beeper alarms. Those are certainly helpful. But in terms of the hours of operation, something that's written again into one of the conditions is certainly more enforceable than just a gentleman's agreement, if you will, or gentle person's agreement not to operate at certain hours. So I would respectfully ask the board that that's something that becomes a condition of whatever decision is made as opposed to a handshake agreement.
It's something we're discussing, Jim.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and please continue with your participation. Anyone else? Anyone from the board? I would entertain a motion for a continuance to February 24th.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to continue 353 Maple Street to February 24th. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And we moved on to February 24th. To those people in the public that were here tonight from Maple Street, I want to thank you very much for your participation and showing up. And I encourage you to continue to show up, especially at the next meeting that this will be discussed on February 24th.
Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, the next item is going to be the first public hearing for 206 Mechanic Street. I would like to read the hearing notice. The applicant, Howland Development, Wayne Fingan and owner, BAS Realty Trust, Edward and Judith Moore trustees, propose to construct 124,200 square foot industrial building with associated improvements at 206 Mechanic Street in Bellingham, approximately 10.53 plus or minus acres of land shown on Assessor's Map 52-03, Zone Industrial and Business 1. I'd like to have a motion to open the initial public hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, the floor has been seconded to open the public hearing on 206 Mechanic Street. Jim, can you give us an overview on what is happening and what has happened with the ZBA?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. So I see the applicant again here tonight, so they can certainly provide you with more information. But before you tonight, we have a development plan and for a warehouse development at the corner of Mechanic and Maple Street. This is a very familiar site, I'm sure, for probably everybody on the board and everybody in the audience here. It's a very visible site. So this location was before the Zoning Board of Appeals not that long ago, as the very corner of the property is business zoned, and I think the applicant's going to get into more of that information later on. But there is technically a variance required, as the industrial use only took up a portion of the property. The zoning board granted that variance with some conditions. Conditions being some traffic mitigation for the intersection, which again, I'm sure the applicant's going to get into. So this is a project that's been before the town for some time. Again, through the Zoning Board of Appeals last year, and now before the Planning Board. This is the first public meeting. We will also engage stormwater and a traffic engineer for this one, as it's again a very important location.
Turn it over to the applicant.
But Bill, can I just speak for a minute
Oh,
first?
certainly. Thank you. I'm sorry. Absolutely.
No problem. I just have to declare that my firm, Newmark, works with Howland Development. I don't personally work with Howland on my specific team. There's other teams that deal with them. And, I'm not a commissioned broker, so my salary isn't tied to anything to do with this specific deal, but I just am declaring that, and I will be filing something with the town clerk in regards to that potential conflict of interest.
Thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it, and I'm sure the public does. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. For the record, my name is John Cusick with Bowler Engineering, and I'm here today with our attorney, Paul Feldman, and Wayne Finnegan with Howland Development. What I'd like to do, well, we're before you for a warehouse, 124,000 square foot project. What I'd like to do is just present at a high level the existing location, the proposed plan, the permitting that we need. I'll turn it over to Paul. As Jim had mentioned, he can go through some of the permitting history with the ZBA and relative to the conditions that we had received from them relative to traffic improvements that we will be making. So that is how I would like to proceed. And if I could share my screen, I can use a couple slides as I move through. It looks like it's disabled.
Just a second, John. Pam, do you mind providing share screen for John?
Yep, he should be all set now.
Thank you.
Now I am. Thank you. Bear with me. Okay, did that show up on screen?
I don't know if everyone can see it. It's a little small.
I'll try to zoom up, but right now being zoomed out right now is actually decent, and I'll zoom in a minute. But the property, as was mentioned, is 206 Mechanic Street. It is the Bellingham Auto Sales property, so I think everybody is likely familiar with it, as it's quite visible in town. just to give you an orientation as to where it is, it's obviously shown in the red outline on the plan here. But this here is Mechanic Street. This here is Maple Street. And the zoning line that was referred to is right about this location. It is a split zone parcel. The one other item I'd like to note is this is the Franklin town line. So as you approach from Franklin and 495, that is the town line of Franklin and Bellingham. And you can see the other uses nearby. We're abutting the Conroy warehouse there, asphalt plant behind us, Gorelick Farms, and some other industrial uses. So with that, the proposed plan is a 124,000 square foot warehouse, as I mentioned. The project has been around for a little bit of time now, so we have worked very closely with the Zoning Board of Appeals, Mr. Kupfer and staff as well, just to really identify any goals and concerns and try to incorporate everything we've heard to date into the plan, which I think we have done, and I think it's a good project. So as you can see, that's where the building is situated. There are two driveways. We have one located on Mechanic Street, one located on Maple Street. Both driveways are separated a good distance from the intersection, which is what you want to do. That's good engineering practice, and it works out very well with the site layout. This driveway, I know it's kind of hard to see, but it's aligned opposite the rapid refill driveway at this location here. The building orientation is such that the rear of the building where the loading facilities are located on the western side. That is important in that we wanted to screen that use from really the outside of the site. So all of that is back here facing our abutting industrial use, which is here. And views from the intersection are screened by the building. There's 47 loading bays, 25 trailer storage parking spaces in this location here. You'll notice the building has a unique shape to it. It's got a kind of an odd angle at the front. The purpose of which was we wanted to provide a significant buffer along the front of the property. We've got about a 70-foot area in here. Again, when you look kind of at our abutter, they kind of squared things out, going in this direction. So they're about 20 feet off. We did not want to do that at the expense of some building square footage. So we've done that so we can provide a nice buffer in that area. So as I mentioned, loading is here. So we have all of the employee parking in this area. In total, we have 117 parking stalls for employees. Again, I would like to point out that there's a pretty nice green belt in between that area, between the parking stall and the road. And within that area, we have a landscape berm that is elevated. And we've got significant plantings on top of that for multiple reasons. It looks nice, it screens the parking, and it breaks up the mass of the building, which is what we wanted to do. We've provided similar treatment along the front of the building as well. You can see we carried that around and landscaped this area. As I mentioned, this here is the Franklin line, and really this is kind of where you approach Bellingham from Franklin. It's the first thing you see. Based on that, we really wanted to provide a welcoming site and some thought to the landscaping that we provided. So we've got a welcome to Bellingham sign right at the intersection. So if you're stopped there, that is what you're looking at. Again, the landscaping behind it and in front of it, and you can kind of see the berm on the side of the building over here I was just referring to. From an engineering standpoint on the site, it's about as straightforward as it gets from a lot of the sites that we see nowadays. But we have nice sands on site, no ledge and deep groundwater. Based on that, we're able to do two things. We were able to further drop the site. So this site's actually about 6 feet lower than the intersection. Again, further kind of breaking the view up of the building. and we're able to balance the earthwork on the site. So with cuts to fills and everything balances, we don't have to bring in a lot of material or ship off a lot of material. From a drainage or from a utility standpoint, all utilities are present along the frontage and are available for reconnection, which is what's shown on the plans. We've made some significant impacts to or improvements to drainage. The site, when the abutting warehouse was constructed 15 or so years ago, whatever exactly it was, there was a detention basin that was constructed to serve this site. It was essentially oversized and wanted the drainage from this site to go to it. Based on conversations with the Conservation Commission agent, we had some discussions about providing treatment and infiltration on our site in accordance with today's standards, even though the site was designed to handle it. So we have done that. We've provided a stormwater system fully compliant with today's stormwater standards by way of recharge and treatment. So essentially every drop of water that hits this site will be treated and infiltrated into the ground, exceeding the state and local standards. As part of the application, we submitted some information from our traffic consultant. Again, as the board likes to see, this is a small warehouse, 124,000, so it is a low traffic generator. But that said, as the board likes to see, we have provided numbers as if it was a different warehouse, light industrial, and then even a high sort facility, just so you could see what those numbers were. And that has been provided to the board, and we expect your peer reviewer will review that. What I will note, though, is from a circulation standpoint, based on the location of the site, the majority of the trucks that will exit from Maple Street, they are restricted from heading northbound on Maple Street. So we want them coming back towards Mechanic.
John, can I interrupt you just 1 second? Are we supposed to be seeing something other than the Welcome to Bellingham sign?
Oh, I can switch over real quick. Yep, I apologize. Thank you, Jim. So as trucks exit this location here, they're restricted from turning this way on Maple Street. We don't want trucks going in that direction based on conversations we've had early on with staff and others. So all trucks will come in this direction. And then based on the proximity of the 140, 495 interchange, the majority of the traffic is going to be heading in this direction away from downtown. So I think the location and the traffic pattern works quite well. We're before this board, as Jim has mentioned, for a site development plan, stormwater permit, and a flexible parking special permit. We're currently before the Conservation Commission. We have filed a notice of intent. It's notable that the wetlands are actually located right here. This is the 100-foot buffer zone. We're well outside of it. However, the commission wanted us to file based on the fact that this detention basin was built 15 years ago. They just still wanted to see that the project was in accordance with good engineering practice. So we have filed with the commission. We had our first hearing with those folks last night. Everything went very, very well. I don't want to speak for them, but I fully expect if the peer review comes through, we'd be able to close this thing out most likely at the next hearing. There really weren't any major comments, just a couple of housekeeping items that they asked for. We received our MIPA ENF certificate within the past week or so. It has been filed for and obtained. And as Jim had mentioned, we received some variances through the work we did with the ZBA, mainly based on the split zone nature of the property. With that, I'd just like to turn it over to Paul Feldman quickly to run through that. And then any one of us can get into further questions and details you may have on the plan set.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mr. Chairman and members of the planning board, my name is Paul Feldman. I'm an attorney. I represent Howland Development. Appreciate the opportunity to appear before you tonight. As you heard Mr. Kupfer reference, we've been through a application with the Zoning Board of Appeals seeking certain variances that we needed to make this project work. The most significant variance was to allow this use in the business zone, because you can see on this plan that the zone line splits the lot. The benefit of allowing that variance, which we have received, so the variance has been issued and has become final, is that it enabled my client to develop this site with the truck loading in the back. If we had to keep the use in the industrial portion of the site, you can configure something, but it would not be a particularly attractive utilization of this property. And the feedback that we got from our preliminary discussions was that this design was much preferable. What went along with that variance is, in the industrial zone, maximum height is 45 feet. In the business zone, it's 35 feet. So to have a building that had a consistent height of 45 feet, we needed a variance for height. That went along with the use variance, and that was granted. And then there were two other variances. One has to do with the driveway to Mechanic Street. The driveway to Mechanic Street, good engineering practice, would locate it as far from the intersection with Maple Street as possible. But as we got closer to that edge of our property, you come to a second driveway on what was just referred to as the Conroy warehouse. And the zoning bylaw wants you to have at least 250 feet of separation between driveways. This is about 130, 135 feet. We needed a variance for that. And, our traffic consultant went through and is happy to review with you why, in these particular circumstances, the separation is not going to create any safety issues. And the way we will, for purposes, we will propose for you guys to consider some relining of Mechanic Street to allow for some center island opportunity and to direct the turning movements to make those driveways work very efficiently. So that variance was granted, and I believe that there was a small variance about the parking layout. One of the major things that came up during the public hearings in front of the zoning board was the operation of the intersection at Maple Street and Mechanic Street. Board members expressed to us that they had personal experience, and it was known that even though that intersection was improved very, very recently at a substantial cost, it's not functioning as well as everybody had hoped and liked. So the zoning board wanted traffic information from us. Vanessa Associate was hired. John just alluded to it, and it'll be reviewed by I know it's going to be reviewed by this board, and at the next board meeting, we'll certainly bring the traffic consultant from Vanessa who did all the work. But the upshot of the work is that even if you gerrymandered the numbers to think about the highest and most potential traffic that can come out of this facility, which is unlikely to happen given the expected tenants that we would expect, the traffic is not going to, the incremental increase in traffic is not going to further aggravate the situation. We spent a lot of time talking with the zoning board about how traffic studies say that, but in reality, it's not the experience that board members have and the community has. And so the board asked us to think about mitigation and how we can participate in fixing that intersection. And so we asked our traffic consultant to do that, and the traffic consultant came up with what what we understood to be a potential improvement that would be very worthwhile for the operation of the intersection, and that is to extend the right turn lane, which is around 75 feet currently, another 200 feet or so, or 250 feet, or I don't remember the exact dimension, because what's happening is as the traffic builds and there are cars that want to make a right turn, they're getting stuck behind cars that are going straight through, and they're not able to access the right turn lane. And it's exasperating the buildup back on Maple Street. And so if you extend that right turn drop lane, you allow the opportunity for cars that are approaching the intersection and want to make a right turn to get into that drop lane and not get caught behind traffic that's going through the intersection, which seemed to be a problem. And we did a study and we were able to numerically document the existence of that problem. We talked about with the zoning board. The zoning board understood the merits of that idea, but also expressed that they had concerns about the left turning movements because, you know, even though the analysis of that turning movement appeared to be that it was functioning fine, again, there was experience that was suggesting that it wasn't. And we talked to our traffic consultant about that. And certainly a traffic signalization study, an optimization study to make the traffic signalization at an intersection work at its optimal level was a potential mitigation. The zoning board, frankly, wanted to get the benefit of the planning board's thinking on what should be the appropriate traffic mitigation, and didn't want to, wanted to address traffic as a condition, but there was a real question of should they start identifying exactly the nature of the mitigation, because, you know, third-party review of traffic and the like would happen during the planning board process. The applicant volunteered a condition which is part of its variance that says, in response to traffic concerns that the ZBA has, the ZBA has requested the applicant, and the applicant has agreed to a traffic mitigation measures in an amount of $250,000. These measures may include extending the right turn lane on Maple Street at the intersection of Maple Street and Route 140 from the existing 75 feet in length to 230 feet in length, as shown on a traffic exhibit that was provided, and other mitigation as a result of specific study and approval of the planning board. And so one of the things we want to work with the planning board on is we have committed to spend $250,000 in traffic mitigation. I will tell you, in representing developers all throughout the Commonwealth, I must have appeared before boards in 70 or 80 cities and towns by now, maybe it's approaching 100. I haven't had a client as willing as this one to really try to work with the community and address a concern that is not necessarily being created by their project, but really is an existing condition that we're stepping into, but we want to try to help and mitigate. And so the $250,000 number, which we voluntarily committed to, is available. We need the planning board's analysis and guidance as to how it should be spent. And we know that it is at least sufficient to cover the cost of that right lane expansion. So we know there's going to be adequate money there. So that's the background on what happened at the ZBA, and they're particularly concerned about traffic and our desire to work with the planning board in specifying the traffic mitigation that the planning board would like to see us implement. The last comment I'll make and turn it back over to John is that John made reference to the fact that we have already been through MIPA and we received our MIPA certificate. Well, you may ask, why did we do that? We did that because we are going to have to obtain from the Department of Transportation an access permit for the Mechanic Street driveway because that's a state road. And the way the law works is before that state agency can issue an access permit, we need to satisfy MIPA, which we've done. So we intend and plan to be submitting to the Department of Mass DOT, the Department of Transportation, with regard to an access permit for the Mechanic Street driveway. And we will work through with the state exactly how they would like us to address lanes and lineage and like on Route 140. That it's a state road. They're going to be the master of that outcome, and we're gonna have to implement what they conclude is the best way to implement. So we look forward to working with the planning board through this site plan review process and the other permits that John mentioned we're seeking from the planning board. And we look forward to bringing this development to Bellingham and adding an attractive asset to the community. Thank you.
Paul, thank you very much. Any other comments from the applicant?
No, at this point, I think we've concluded our presentation. Are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Jim, do you have any questions at this point?
No, not at this point. As you guys are aware, we got to get the peer review started. This is, we'll take a look at stormwater, we'll take a look at traffic. As the applicant mentioned, zoning board has already started that discussion, but it's good to get the peer review in there and provide some good technical experience to guide that discussion. So, yeah, I would reserve comments till a later date.
And with regards to the scope of the traffic study, we will look at the what type of build out on this building. For occupancy, we'll look.
Can you say that again, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I would like to look at a worst case scenario for traffic as we move forward.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I believe that. So John, could you lower the screen or release the screen? But yes, the applicant, the engineer before us is familiar with our process by now. So as everyone in the public knows, if the warehouse is coming in without tenant, the board has historically required the worst case scenario to be administered or reviewed, meaning highest percentage of IT data demonstrating a very high volume. That's more than what the state would require. It's actually almost double what the state would require, but I think it's the right way to go. The board has historically always done it, and it actually seems to match up quite closely with what we've seen later on. If you're looking at uses like e-commerce, for example, it is significantly higher than those of a lesser intense warehouse distribution use, however, but the board typically will look at the worst case scenario.
I'll reserve my comments for later on, but I do have looking at overnight storage, employee parking. Those are the things I would like to address down the road. Any other board members have anything they want to add?
Yeah, with this is Phil. With
Thank you, Phil.
With the Maple Street exit, I would like to see the turn ratios there too, coming off with the trucks when we get to the peer review. So maybe a diagram of the lanes as you're coming off of your lot onto Maple Street on that exit. I know you're trying to move the trucks towards 495. But I think when we get to that topic with is there a way to design the driveway so that the trucks don't go up north on Maple Street? It looks pretty straight there on the plans that I can see. So when we get to that point, I guess I'd like to talk about that.
I
And then
was
the
going to
other
mention
point,
that as well. I did,
Okay.
the applicant indicated when the trucks exit the property onto Maple Street, you'll be forced to take a right-hand turn. I'd like to look into something similar when they exit the property that will make it difficult to take a right-hand turn to go back into town. I like to see the traffic flow to prevent crossing over of Mechanic Street and going towards downtown. I know it may create a bottleneck, but I do want to have the traffic on Maple Street as little as possible. And then again, looking at, I got in trouble last time saying a conservative approach because it was misunderstood by people. But the worst case scenario for building out of this warehouse. Does the applicant have any idea? We would like to look at hours of 9 to 5 or 9 to 9. Is that in concert with the target that the applicant may have for tenants?
I could tell you that we don't have an end user, and there may be more than one end user because this building may lend itself to some division. But like every, commercial industrial operation, the tenants expect to be able to operate 24/7. And so that's how we would want this project considered, given its, given its surroundings with the asphalt plant on one side and the substantial industrial building on the other side.
I appreciate that, sir. But I also want you to know, Maple Street is a residential area.
Mhm.
So I want to keep that in mind. I'm not saying, we're holding you to anything, just it's open discussion. But I do not want to see a lot of traffic going north on Maple Street.
We completely agree with you on that. We completely agree with you on that. That's why that Maple Street exit is going to be right turn only. It's going to be signed, and we could look at the geometry to enhance that. One of the questions we'll have for the planning board is we are certainly going to force all truck traffic, to go to the intersection of Mechanic Street. I think we were open-minded about our cars, regular vehicular traffic, the employees that enter that employee parking lot, while our expectation is, and the traffic study would suggest that most of the traffic would also go south. There may be certain, passenger vehicles that would exit and make a left turn and go north on Maple. But we're in complete agreement, and we would accept the condition that all trucks be prohibited from going north on Maple Street. They have to make that right turn out of the facility, and we'll work with the planning board between signage, operation, geometry to ensure that that happens.
Okay, we appreciate that. Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, one other question.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I don't know how to raise my hand. Go ahead. I apologize. I'll go on mute.
Go ahead, Phil.
The berm that goes along Maple Street, can you show us how far up that goes? Does it go all the way up to the driveway, all the way down to the corner? Or I like the fact it's going to, provide some privacy and that type of thing for the, people on the road. But is it the entire length of Maple Street in your property?
Let's see, I'm going to share my screen again. So unfortunately, the sheets are broken into two sheets, so you'll have to bear with me as I flip pages. But you'll see on this is the back side here. You can see the berm coming up this way to our match line halfway through the building. And then when you flip the wrong way, apologies. You can see the berm continues up and starts to come back to grade right about here, give or take. And then we
And
build.
how high is that?
It varies in height. At this point right here, it's a high point of about 8 feet. And then obviously it tapers down towards the edges. So right about there is about 8 feet.
Plantings on there,
Absolutely.
and you'll have future diagrams for that?
We have current diagrams for that, but that was in the set. You know, that
We
shows.
can look at that later, sir.
You got it.
That's it from me.
Hey, Bill, if any of the other board members don't have any comments or questions, I have a few.
Certainly.
I don't want to jump ahead of the line, though.
So go ahead.
All right, perfect.
Rob, one thing I want to pick my attention, and you may pick up on this. It looks like they have storage for trucks back there. Two things for the applicant. They have all the trucks on site and not on Maple Street or Mechanic Street, waiting to get in. And if you're storing trucks overnight, we need to address the concern of a spillage of any gasoline from those trucks. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob.
Thanks, Bill. First off, thank you, John and Paul, for the presentation. That was really informative, so thank you very much. I guess I just want to echo some of the same comments made by Phil and Bill regarding the curb cuts. I agree that, you know, trucks going north on Maple Street, it's great if that can be restrictive because it's just not a good road for that kind of traffic. I am equally concerned with the Mechanic Street curb cut, specifically trucks exiting and carrying over the travel lanes to go back to 495, or taking a right and heading into the center of town. And I know that curb cut is probably going to be difficult to make it restrictive. I would almost prefer if that was a entrance only, right turn in only from 495, so you can circulate any tractor trailers or large vehicles. It's a one-way, so they come in from Mechanic Street, they leave off of the Maple Street curb cut, going back to the Mechanic Street intersection, then back to 495. That would just be what I would like to see. I understand that might be a hindrance on what you're proposing, but I think also getting rid of an exit there will also deter any passenger vehicles that might want to leave through that curb cut from entering your loading zone, which I don't think you really want to mix those two traffic flows. So that would just be my comments regarding traffic. I know it'll be peer reviewed, but I also wanted to ask, I know you're discussing potential traffic mitigation by extending that right turn lane, correct? That I heard that correct on Maple Street. Is that going to affect your site design at all? I know you're just showing the berm. It doesn't look like there's that much room for that lane.
So there is room. You'll notice we've probably got about 50 feet of green space in this area over here. So
okay.
we purposely provided some extra space in here to account for that, or whatever the ultimate mitigation desires are. But we did want to do that. The berm may get a foot or two smaller, perhaps, if that were the case. But we absolutely would have room for the landscaped area, a berm, and some plantings there. That wouldn't preclude that from happening.
Okay, so the berm might just get shorter, but you've got room to accommodate it. Perfect.
That is correct. And if that were the case, we could potentially bump up some landscaping too if it got a little different. That we could certainly work with you on that.
Perfect. Another question just regarding the traffic mitigations. I know you stated that the applicant's willing to put $250,000 towards mitigations, which is extremely generous. I think that's great. I don't know, you said Vanessa's the one that did the traffic report, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Did they put any type of cost estimate together of what it would cost to do those two proposed mitigation measures as far as extending that turn lane and signal, I guess, resignaling or just improvements to the signals? The only reason I know that it is DOT jurisdiction and price goes up significantly when DOT is involved.
So what I can tell you is that a signalization optimization study on a state highway, there is a specific protocol and a specific methodology. We're not saying that the signalization is not optimal right now because it's not a very old intersection. It was completely designed and studied not too long ago. But we know from our experience in front of the zoning board that we heard loud and clear. There were members that have experience that would suggest that it doesn't feel like that intersection is working as well as it can. And so we do know, we did ask Vanessa to price out the extension of the right turn lane and give us an estimate. And we know that the $250,000 is adequate to accomplish that 100%. Whether there's additional dollars to do the signal optimization study, I don't know. It's an estimate that Vanessa gives us. Some of it goes to, there's some utility poles that have to get moved. What's the utility company going to charge? And so the answer is 250. Can I say to you 250 is sufficient to do both? I don't want to overstate. I don't want to get ahead of us. It may not be adequate to do both, but I don't think we're far off. And with all the other development going on and with all the other mitigation opportunities, I'm sure there's resources that if the conclusion is both should be done, the resources will be found.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you for that info, that clarification. So I guess I just want to take a step back from traffic. I have a few more questions or comments. The next thing, just regarding stormwater, I know you stated, John, that the existing basin that you'll be utilizing after the underground infiltration system was designed for a development on this site. What exactly was the design? Did they spec out a specific size building, or how was that sized exactly?
No, that's a very good question. So long story short, to get into some of the history, the detention basin is that faint line right in here.
Yeah.
So it's actually on this property and the abutting property over here. When this development came in, the plan was to develop a basin that handled flow from this site as well as this site. During the permitting process, to address the question that you had, it essentially said you needed to plan for, I want to say it was 90% of the site needed to be impervious. So it was a very, very large number. We're well under the number that it was designed for. However, even on top of that, based on conversations with Ann, just how regulations change, they wanted us to treat and infiltrate the first flush on our site, which is what we've done. But if you actually head into the site and kind of look back down the hill here, it's a massive basin. It's huge.
It looks very big from the aerial, so.
It's huge.
Yeah. So basically that recharge basin is for recharge volume and water quality volume, essentially. And then peak rate attenuation with the big basin?
That is absolutely correct. So we
Okay.
get 100% treatment, and the recharge volume that would be required. We kind of do it on our site, and then we just attenuate flows off of, utilize this basin to attenuate flows. This basin doesn't have any flow leaving it during the 100-year storm, just so you know. It's fully draining. It's nice sands out there.
Great. Okay, and then I guess the next thing, which kind of alludes to what Bill was talking about as far as spill containment and such. I think, so the warehouse itself, there's no tenant right now. You're just trying to build it out, and hopefully there'll be tenants in line to move in, but there's no specific tenant picked yet, correct?
Exactly correct.
Okay. So one thing, and I know this was brought up at another warehouse development project in town. I asked if this was considered a LUPL. I know in your stormwater report, it's not. You said it's not considered a land use high potential pollutant load. I think that in my opinion, if we're doing these warehouses, there's no tenants. There is a good chance that when a tenant is selected, there could be outdoor fleet storage here. Depending on the tenant, if it's a distribution center and the person owns their own fleet, there's a good chance that there's going to be some storage outside. And I do think that this should be designed to meet the LUPL standards. And I don't think that it's a hard sell. I think you're pretty darn close to it. So I just would like to make sure that, if a tenant goes in here, there's fleet storage in the future, there are the stormwater treatment trains that are in place in case that happens.
Yeah, we'll double check that. It would not surprise me if we've already met the LUPL standards, to be honest with you, but I'll confirm in the next meeting.
Okay, and I think as far as that goes, I have one more thing to bring up just regarding stormwater treatment. I noticed in your stormwater report that you're considering pre-treatment with isolator rows.
Correct.
For your underground stormwater system. I am not familiar with. I'm familiar with isolator rows and how they're used to keep that system operating for the longevity of the system, making sure it operates. I'm not familiar with it being in Mass DEP stormwater manual for 25% pre-treatment. I could be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure that isn't in there. So I would just, when you're looking at the LUPL standards for the stormwater, I know that most likely won't be considered a pre-treatment use for a LUPL. So you might need to amp that up a bit. And I'm not familiar with using isolator rows for pre-treatment, but
Got it.
I think with that I can. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
I apologize. I was going to say I'm fairly certain we've done that before and worked that with some projects through DEP. I will confirm that, and we can make any modifications you deem fit. But I think that's worked that way in the past. But I will confirm that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Oh, and one more thing, then I will stop talking. Has DOT weighed in at all on that curb cut on Mechanic Street for any preliminary comments?
So we had some preliminary meetings with DOT to review the project, and then obviously through the MEPA process, they were involved and commented on that. They haven't done their final review, and they typically never will until you're done with the local process and go before them, as I'm sure you know. But all of the initial conversations we've had with them is everything seems fine. It's aligned with the other driveway. There's ample distance across from the existing intersection, and we're closing half a dozen curb cuts that exist on that stretch right now.
Perfect. All right. So with that, I will stop talking. Thank you for the clarification.
Rob, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board?
Bill, if I could just quickly, just going forward.
Of course.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Just as we go through this process, I think that everyone here and everybody that's on, all the butters and whatnot, are most concerned about traffic. And I think that if we had to identify the top 5 most traffic sensitive intersections in town, this would be certainly the top 3, I would suggest. But as we go forward in this process, it would be helpful, I think, to the board, at least for me, that we have a really good practical modeling of operations and how this facility could operate in terms of trucks leaving and entering. And we really have a good sense of how this is going to look practically, because this building straddles a very sensitive intersection, and it, rather than understanding how many vehicles are going in and out, is understanding how they're going in and out and where they're going in and out, really does have a significant impact, I think, on this location. So going forward, if we can look into that, that would be helpful, at least from my point of view.
Brian, will you be happy if we have diagrams regarding the flow of the traffic?
Well, I don't pretend to be a traffic engineer. I'd be happy to take it as, as it's prepared, and as long as we're looking into it. I think that's the important thing.
What I like to do is visually look at it so all the board members can see it and understand it as well as the public.
Yeah. One thing we could do, and that's an important comment that we just heard. When we talk to Vanessa, and we will have them diagram out their enter and exit distribution analysis, so that we know that all of the trucks exiting Maple Street are going to go south, because they're going to be required to, and we're going to make sure that happens. But in terms of Mechanic Street, for example, the traffic engineer is going to be able to give you the distribution pattern. I already know that I think it's as much as 80% are going to turn left, and if they wanted to turn left, they're gonna go around to Maple Street. And I heard the comment about the clockwise circulation. We're gonna address that internally to determine if that functionally makes sense and won't impair operations too dramatically to have a clockwise circulation. So we heard that idea too. So we'll make sure we talk to our traffic engineer to focus on the distribution of traffic and how it works during peak hour, non-peak hours, and correspondingly, the employee traffic. Again, without knowing exactly the end user, we're not going to be able to predict this precisely, but I will tell you that not only are our traffic numbers so conservative that they're really unrealistic. We know that this facility is too small to be a high flow distribution facility. No end user that does that will be in this facility. We still analyze those numbers because we know the board wants us to do that. But we also did something else. We also analyzed existing traffic with making modifications, not only to address COVID, but to sort of take the worst counts we could find. So, we were very, the zoning board was very concerned about traffic. We hear Mr. Salisbury this evening. So we will try to address both the thinking of Mr. Luzier that we heard and what Mr. Salisbury has just requested when we come back with our traffic engineer.
Thank you, Paul.
Bill, I just had one question.
Yeah.
About signage. And maybe I missed this, John, earlier in the presentation, but will there be building signage, or are we not doing that with potential tenants to kind of keep this conspicuous and sort of focus on the Welcome to Bellingham sign, or will there be signage on Maple Street?
I mean, there'll definitely be the welcome to Bellingham sign. Relative to what sign a tenant might want on the building, we just don't know that at this point. I can circle back with Wayne to see if we can get any assumptions and guesses as to what might go on the building, but we really haven't focused much on that. Anything we would show would be in compliance with the ordinance. We wouldn't look to get any relief from signage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. Is Mr. Martinez still here?
Mr. O'Connell, yes, I am, and I think what I'll do is I'll just defer. I don't need to
Go ahead,
rehash.
John.
No.
Go ahead.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I think everyone on the board has addressed my concerns. I know this is a first meeting. I have a number of notes that I'd like to address with the board, maybe individually or as a group. As a resident of Maple Street, as you all know, and as a vice chair of the select board, I've got to kind of divide my comments between my life as a resident on Maple Street and then my responsibility as a member of the Board of Selectmen. So I just want to say, one thing I will say is that I did raise after the zoning board meeting the need to improve the intersection as it is today, because it really doesn't work the way it was intended to work. And that's because that lane on the north side, I guess, of Maple Street isn't long enough to take a right-hand turn. So I was really happy to hear that this organization addressed that piece. My concern just in general is the not knowing the tenant. And this has been my concern as a resident from day one with all the buildings that are going on, all the development, is we never really knew who the tenants were. And thinking about now we have Amazon and we have all those number of trucks. And now we're also earlier this evening talking about expansion of a building on Maple Street, but we don't know who that tenant will be. And we know the tenant today that's there, and they have more like refrigerated trucks. They don't have tractor trailers. We just don't know what's going to happen. We have to think out 2, 3, 4, 5 years when we look at these traffic studies. And because here we are, 2 years later, and already considering redeveloping that intersection again. So what's going to happen 3, 4 years down the road when Amazon or the owner of that building comes to us and said, there's enough land there. How about another 200,000 square feet, and that's another 60 to 70 tractor trailer trucks? I think there has to come a point where the board looks back holistically and says, enough is enough. And that's all I'm going to say to that. And I think we're at a point now and Mr. Salisbury said, this is probably one of the top 3 intersections where we have major issues with traffic flow, and we're only going to be adding to that. I have an idea. I don't know if it's ever possible. I would love to see no vehicle traffic on Maple Street. You're saying, well, how's that possible? Well, I do enough traveling, or did in my years, and I've seen a lot of annex roads. So we know that at the entrance of the new Lincoln properties and where the apartment building is going to be, there's going to be a light. Well, why not have traffic flow? I know that would require widening Mechanic Street and doing some land takings and working with those the owners, but we could actually do a much better job of having a lane that actually is restricted to only the folks coming in and out of this building, and then exiting onto onto Mechanic Street using a light. So I think we need to think outside the box here and stop being confined with, we just have Maple Street to work with. Let's think outside the box and how to make this work. Now that may be a lot of money. Then the project may not be worth it. Again, I'm asking the developers to think outside the box. I'm also asking the developers to think about the east side of Maple Street. So I know that's Franklin, but who are the landowners in Franklin? Can you work with those landowners in Franklin? Can we as a town work with Franklin? We certainly work with them at the end of Stonehenge. There's a development at the end of a Bellingham Road, that's Franklin. So I know we can work with them. So what can we do? Can we take some land, or can the developer take some land in Franklin to widen that east side of Maple Street, making that left turn on Mechanic going toward 495 or going east simpler? Because that's a problem right now. It's a problem today. Now, if you just add more tractor trailers, and here's the sore, the rub with me, and I understand you're building a spec building, you're going to attract a tenant. You can't, you know, and it's harder for you to attract a tenant if you're to tell them no to 24/7 and no to tractor trailers. That limits your market. I get that, but we have a problem. The more tractor trailers, I mean, if you just added 15 or 20 times that, because it's 2 trips a day, you're just adding the volume. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm just throwing out some ideas from living on the street for 35 plus years. I like the idea of the berm. I like the berm in front of Victory. I know I have some folks here that don't like the berm. Well, they don't live across from Victory and they don't have the light shining in their bedrooms at night, but the berm blocks that. So I can look out my window and I can see some really nice trees instead of looking at a big giant building. So the berm helped out, at least for the residents on Maple Street. I like the berm. I hope the berm stays. When it comes to landscaping, I don't want 3-inch camber trees. I want 10-inch camber trees. I want mature trees. So when you come into that Welcome to Bellingham sign, it looks like it's been there for a while. It doesn't look so new. If you know what I mean, it becomes part of the community by having larger trees, bigger camber trees. And I know they're more expensive, but this is what I think would make it more attractive as to the developer. So these are just some initial thoughts that I have. But the biggest challenge, obviously, I don't want to repeat what everybody said. It's going to be that traffic. And I want you to think not how to reposition the building or how to move the building back. But can we get a 3rd lane in there where all the traffic comes in and out of this facility off of Mechanic Street and not even use Maple Street? It is possible. It is possible. You just have to think about it. I don't know if you've ever actually thought about it. I'm just throwing the idea out there. So that's all I have to say. I want to thank you very much for the time. And I'm sure I know I'll be back. And thanks for the opportunity.
We look forward to you coming back. Anyone else in the public? Jim, anyone's hands raised?
Yes, we have Mr. Mike O. I know has had his hand raised for a while.
Yeah, can you hear me, Jim?
Mike, we can.
Okay, hi. So I got a couple of quick questions. Mike O'Haron. The size of the building, I heard 45 feet for the height. What's the length and the width?
Get that to you in 1 second. I don't have that directly in front of me.
And while that's being looked up, just to keep things moving along, question for the planning board. When the warehouse just to the west on Mechanic Street, which has been completed and may be occupied at some point in time down the road, was approved, part of the conditions for that was the developer providing a traffic study through to the center of town with lighted and so forth at Blackstone Street and up through the light that they have yet to install. And I thought it may have extended as well the traffic to the Mechanic Street, Maple Street intersection as well. Has that money been utilized, given by the developer yet? Has the study happened? Because it sounds like it would be really beneficial to have had some of this traffic study done to impact going towards the center of town as well.
Mike, I think the best person to answer that would be Jim.
Yeah, Mike, the Route 140 corridor study has been completed and is posted on our website under the planning department's website.
Did it include that intersection, Jim?
It goes to the length on Mechanic Street. It doesn't run up Maple Street either direction.
That light. Okay, good. Okay, thanks. I'll check that out.
And Mike, just to let you know, until a light is in place and approved by the state, the owner of that property is paying for a detail.
I remember that from the conditions. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
And that was pretty substantial for us to get.
Yeah, I remember that. I was shocked when I heard that they had agreed to that. Minor point, there was and may still be there, right on the corner there, his town historic marker marking the fact that trolleys used to be there. Has any discussion been done by the Historic Association in town or whatever about doing something, if that's obviously not going to be there, if that site is developed, to relocate that? I mean, across the street's Franklin, so we can't maybe do that, but it has some historic value at some point in time because somebody put a town marker up there.
So I guess to your first question, the building size, I apologize, 185 by 640. It varies a bit because of the chamfer, but that's roughly the length and width.
185 wide and 6, how much?
So in the long area here, it's 640 and 185 this way. So a little bit shorter in this direction. And then I didn't quite follow your comment. I apologize about the marker.
Is there a historical marker up there?
There was a marker marking the fact that trolley lines used to go to that center. I was surprised to see it. It popped up a few years ago and was there right at the corner. And I didn't know if the town was aware of that and or doing anything about it, or whether it's just disappeared and it's not going to happen. Not that obviously there are any trolley tracks still left there, but it was a town marker. So it's just a general question on that. And the last thing I was going to ask or mention, since everybody else is talking about traffic, I know that I saw some information about that. I haven't had a chance to read it all through, but the traffic study was talking about pre-COVID traffic levels being analyzed, which is great because that absolutely should be considered. But also making sure that we note, please, that we consider the new Curtis apartments, which are about to come when they're finished building out. All those hundreds and something units. I know Jim knows the number off the top of his head, probably. Just up the street, that traffic will certainly impact the new warehouse that we were just talking about, which will have the lights opposite the Curtis apartments. The traffic has to come out of there, and mostly it's going to be directed to the left, away from the center of town. That was one of the conditions that I know the planning board was advocating for, as well as Don Martinez mentioned, the Amazon traffic and other warehouse traffic already coming down Mechanic Street, as well as all of the trucks which are supposed to, from the logging and landscaping companies, all the log trucks and mulch trucks. So that while conservative numbers may seem conservative to some people, having traffic through that intersection for 30 plus years like Don, going east to west mostly, and on both bicycle as well as cars, I know that it has gotten much worse. I have seen cars regularly backed up, and this is with the COVID in the last 2 years, with the Amazon traffic backed up out of sight on Mechanic Street. So while adding a right turn extension is helpful, a lot of them turn left, a lot of them go straight through. It's still not going to do much good if it's backed up beyond that and a truck wants to turn left to go into the Mechanic Street entrance to the site, and then they're backing up traffic that wants to go north on Maple. So I know that'll be in more detail looked at. So thank you.
Mike, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I see Mr. Dunley has his hand up as well.
Jim?
If that that is correct, am I recognized, sir?
You are.
And thank you for the time. I won't speak too much then about the traffic. I think we've heard a lot about that. I will add these couple of points. One is that don't just consider the Maple and 140 intersection. We get a lot of traffic that comes on High Street from the Campanelli facility. I can't tell you how many times a week tractor trailers go down that very narrow street, even though they're not supposed to. Employees use that street. If this intersection gets backed up any more than it already is, that's going to cause more and more traffic to seek ways to not have to go to that intersection and traverse Maple Street. We need better controls on Maple Street. The signage there that says no vehicles over 10,000 pounds isn't cutting it. Somehow we got to stop the tractor trailers from coming down that street. And clearly, again, path of least resistance for motorists. If this intersection deteriorates more, they're going to start using High Street. So that needs to come into a study. And again, conservative numbers may show that there's no impact to High Street, but everyday residents know that there will be. So there needs to be some controls placed on High Street on the there. Next, I'd just like to talk about the aesthetics. I was looking at the plan set. I didn't see anything definitive on the elevations of the buildings. I know there was some nice welcome to Bellingham graphics that were provided by the applicant and their introduction a few minutes ago. But I would really like the planning board to work really hard to create some design and aesthetic elements into the facades of this building so that it's not a monolithic warehouse. You know, there's ways you can make a warehouse look more inviting. look more community, relief details, simulated storefronts almost, so it looks, multi-tenant. Just to say welcome to Bellingham and see a monolith warehouse is, it's a bad look on our town, to be quite frank. We're already turning into warehouse central. Let's not extend that perception even further. Let's really look into the aesthetics of what that building looks like. Next, I'd like to just talk about noise. Although this may seem far removed from us residents over on High Street, the reality is that it's not. We have the Army Corps of Engineers natural water storage area, which is essentially flat. It's in relative proximity to that. And as we know, when we had the various other warehouses built on Maple Street, the number of residents that spoke quite vociferously on the noise that comes from Blue Links, the noise that comes from the Riley Brothers paving every night, every morning. Summertime, we need to close our windows. And one would say, well, those are not even in proximity to you. The answer is, go to an ocean sometime and you can hear a boat, 2 miles away. You can almost hear them having their normal conversation on a boat. That's how noise carries back there. So my suggestion is, like our select person, I've had the opportunity to visit many industrial parks in my professional career, and the trend these days where industrial establishments, facilities are co-located near residential facilities, there are very hard restrictions on yard activities at night. There's clear signage that when I go into some of these industrial facilities, to the office park part of it, that there's no yard activity at night, and night is very conservative. It's between 9 and 5 a.m. This does not mean that the tenants would have no activity. They can do indoor activity. If it's light assembly work, they've already told us they don't know who the tenant's going to be. So I do think we need restrictions on yard activities at an appropriate, reasonable hour, so that when you put your children down at 9 o'clock in the summertime, they're not woken up at 9 a.m., 1 a.m. with trailer hookups and backup annunciators, et cetera. And that noise will carry over through that natural storage area. Signage, I'm glad to hear that one of the members spoke about signage. That was on my list as well. This kind of goes back to the aesthetics of the building. I think you probably need just a single marquee sign, something very low key, not something that, yells out at you that, hey, there's all these tenants in here. And again, this is the first impression people are going to have when they come into Bellingham. It's got to be done right. And I think that's kind of all I had for the moment. Oh, one other anecdote. And Jim Culper, I sent you a image of this. When Amazon opened, we all speak with rosy eyes, not knowing what the tenant is, but we'll put all kind of controls in, and we will mitigate as much as we can and plan for the conservative. Week 2 after Amazon opened, I came home from work one day and there's 3 Amazon vans in my driveway. I wasn't expecting anything from Amazon that day, so I asked, what were they doing? One of them jumped in the truck and drove away. The other 2, I was standing in front of their truck so they couldn't move it. And they said, well, we needed to shuffle our packages around. So folks, this is what you get. It's the unexpected things. They were using my driveway to stage their packages because their docking times are so short over at Amazon. They got to get their truck out and they don't even give them enough time to stage their packages properly. So they pulled into a residential driveway with 3 of their trucks to restage their trucks. This is what you get. So got to be very careful when we don't know who the tenant is going to be. And these controls, although they may seem overbearing to the applicant, it's us that have to live there. It's our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Jim Cupfer, could you approach Amazon about that?
Yeah, that was some time ago. Mr. Dunley did reach out, and we did reach out to Amazon and followed up as well.
I assume that's decreased?
To my knowledge, but we can certainly reach out to them again.
That would be appreciated. Anyone else?
I'm not seeing any other hands at this time.
Then I would like to entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to February 24th.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second by Phil.
We have a motion on the floor to continue the public hearing, has been seconded, to February 24th. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously.
Bill, if I could, what would be the topic for that evening? Are we picking one?
I'm thinking, Jim, when can we start with peer reviewing?
So we're pretty close with starting peer review right away for this one. So we could likely have either topic ready to roll. Perhaps, as it gets closer, I can see how the peer reviews are going and what is ready, and get everyone prepped and with enough information and the applicant on the same page as to what topic we could address. It likely would be either traffic or stormwater to start.
Okay. If it's traffic, I think that could be rather time consuming. So if that's the case, we may want to leave it to traffic for one night.
Yeah, understood. We might need a separate night just for that
And then
alone.
maybe a separate night for stormwater. Because it looks like we have a full agenda on the 24th. And I want to make sure that, the public can contribute as much as they can. So that will be carried over to February 24th. The next item is general business.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Best of luck. Very good presentation. And to the public, thank you very much. Mr. Dudley, Mr. Martinez, Mr. O'Haron, and everyone else who participated. It is much appreciated.
Thank you.
We encourage
Thank you.
your future meetings. And we all had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting.
Bill, if I could, there's just one edit that I saw, that in the minute section itself, referencing the minutes, I think it didn't reference I think it was supposed to be December minutes, but I think it says the date of the minutes that we approved, or the date of the hearing in which we approved the minutes, but not the actual date of the minutes.
I can check that for you, Brian.
Okay, that was it.
We're looking at the January 13th minutes, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
What was that, Bill?
I think it said January 13th on a motion made by Brian Salisbury, seconded to approve the minutes of January 13th with revisions.
Yeah, it should be like
December 9th or December.
December,
Yes. Yes. Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice catch.
One thing also with those minutes, with present at the meeting, I was not present at the meeting.
Well, I wasn't sure about that because I wasn't sure if you jumped on after.
I didn't.
Okay, no problem.
Sometimes,
I can
Rob,
fix that.
sometimes it's hard to tell.
No, I get it.
I
I
can
get
make
it.
that
You know,
change.
I have that effect on people. They just ignore me. I get it. That's why I talk so much tonight.
Anything else this evening? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in
Excuse me,
favor
Bill.
of-
Do we want to accept those with revisions or do you want to hold off?
I accept it with revisions, please. And again, I technically have to vote on that.
Okay.
All in favor of accepting the meeting from last minutes with revisions, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, that motion passes unanimously. Again, it's with revisions. And we made a motion to adjourn. All in favor, we said yes. Brian, the floor is yours.
Good night, Bellingham.
Everyone,
Good night,
thank you.